Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GHS Global Harmonized System of Classification of Labelling Standards. So this is Chemical Labelling Standards. My name is Rod Bolt. I'm the Barcode Channel Manager at Toshiba. So today I'm going to go through 4 points. What is GHS? The GHS Labelling Standard. Implementation from a hardware and software side, and also where you can find more information. So what is Global Harmonized System, or GHS? So chemicals are being used worldwide to enhance and improve life in all forms of practice. But even though there are widespread benefits of using chemicals, there is also potential for adverse effects to people or the environment. And because of these effects in the past, countries have developed their own laws and regulations, requiring information to be prepared and transmitted through labels and safety data sheets, or SDSs. Australia in the past has used the Australian Code for the Transport of Dangerous Goods by Road and Rail, or ADG code, which sets out the requirements for transporting dangerous goods by road or rail. But given the massive amount of chemicals worldwide, regulating these chemicals for any single entity is just not possible. And also, each country had their own local use settings, which made exportation impossible to do. Whilst one country might consider a chemical highly flammable or toxic, another country may not, and their SDS may not meet the requirements from one country to the next. So GHS was developed given the reality of the extensive global trade in chemicals and the need to develop a global classification system for safe use, transport, and disposal. A global recognized harmonized approach to classification and labeling. So once countries consent to use this standard and have this information on their chemicals, they may import, export, and produce labels in their own country and utilize a global infrastructure to control chemical exposures and protect people and the environment. So the GHS labeling standard incorporates 9 pictograms, a GHS signal word, for example, danger or warning, a GHS hazard statement, for example, toxic if swallowed, which is a hazard statement for acute toxicity ingestion, category 3. So then there is the GHS precautionary statement, for example, how to prevent emergencies or how to store the chemical. This standard is recognized worldwide, which allows chemicals to be sold, transported, and used without mislabeling or confusion. So if you're transporting hazardous chemicals, and manufacturers and importers of hazardous chemicals must classify it according to the Australian Dangerous Goods Code, or ADG code, and the GHS. So what is the difference between ADG and GHS? The ADG code provides information targeted at managing immediate hazards, such as emergency situations during transport, whereas the GHS provides information regarding the use, handling, and storage of a chemical at the workplace, physical and health. So one's for the road, one's for usage at a workplace. So the ADG code only applies to road and rail transport of dangerous goods and is given its authority by its incorporation into the statement and territory transport legislation. So Sydney has different legislations to Melbourne, to Adelaide, to Queensland, to Western Australia, South Australia and West Australia and Northern Territory. Each state and territory has their own type of legislation. So the ADG code is referred to in the workplace health and safety regulations for placards and manifest purposes at workplaces. So GHS labeling is suitable on internal packaging for goods in transit. However, an ADG symbol may be substituted for a GHS pictogram where the ADG symbol, class symbol, represents the same hazard to meet transport requirements. The workplace health and safety regulations applies to the use, handling, and storage of hazardous chemicals at a workplace. So this means that GHS applies to only chemicals which may have been a dangerous goods in transit is in use at the workplace. So hazardous chemicals that are consumer products used in the workplace in a manner consistent with household use are exempt from GHS labeling requirements. So Windex, whilst it's toxic, it really only needs to, it's a consumer product used in a workplace. So GHS 3 to GHS 7. So currently at the moment, Australia uses GHS 3 for the classification of labeling and standards and everything, and safety sheets and everything like that for workplace hazardous chemicals. So GHS Australia officially began the transition to GHS 7 on the 1st of January 2021. They've set a transition period for 2 years, so it'll end on the 31st of December 2022. And so during this time, manufacturers and importers of workplace hazardous chemicals may use either GHS 3 or GHS 7 to classify hazardous chemicals and to prepare labels and SDSs. But once the transition period has ended on the 31st of December 2022, so the end of this year, only GHS 7 may be used. So the 2-year transition period will just allow time for manufacturers and importers to prepare a new classification and, and labels and SDSs for hazardous chemicals if necessary, and just keeping in line with Australia and the and our trading partners overseas who are also adopting GHS 7, and just ensure classification labels and SDSs are based on the most up-to-date systems of classification and hazard communication. So who does this affect? So this affects people if you're importing or manufacturing aerosols. So the flammable aerosols hazardous class is now called aerosols. Also, if people are using flammable, fluoronic, and chemical unstable gases, if kind of similar to what if you're unstable gases, chemical unstable gases, non-flammable gases, desensitized explosives, and also there is a change to the category 2I irritation. So they've now given classification for category 2A and category 2B I irritations. So there's a few things that have changed, not a huge amount, but definitely, if you do import or manufacture these areas, this is going to be something that affects you, and you need to make sure that you update your labeling and classifications and SDSs. So the GHS pictograms and labeling standards. So what are the actual pictograms and labeling standards? So there are 3 different types of hazardous pictograms. So physical hazards, health hazards, and environmental hazards. So then there are pictograms that are for both physical and health hazards, for example, flammable gases. But we're going to talk about them individually and take them through with you. So first we're going to start off with the physical hazards. So we're talking about GHS-01, exploding bombs, unstable explosives, self-reactive substances and mixtures, and so for example TNT and something like nitroglycerin. And then we've got GHS-02, which is just flammable. We're not saying just flammable. I mean, that's still pretty, but we're talking about gases, liquids, and solids that are combustible. Self-heating substances, mixtures. So for example, acetone, methanol, and most solvents. Now we have GHS-03, which is oxidizing. So oxidizing liquids, gases, and solids. So for example, sulfur dioxide, most halogens, and nitric acid. And then we have GHS-04, which is compressed gas. So compressed, liquefied, or refrigerated. So for example, liquid nitrogen, liquid oxygen, liquid helium. And then we have GHS-05, which is corrosive. So corrosive to metals and organic materials. So for example, strong acids and bases, so nitric acid and calcium oxide. So they are the physical. Now we have health hazards. So we have GHS-06, which is toxic. So acute toxicity. So oral dermal inhalation. So for example, nitrogen dioxide and chlorine. And then we have GHS-07. So it's harmful. So it's acute toxicity, so oral dermal inhalations we spoke about before. So skin irritation, skin sensitization, organ toxicity, respiratory tract irritation, narcotic effects. So this symbol is not to be used in conjunction with skull and crossbone pictogram or corrosion pictograms. So health hazard pictograms is to be used to indicate respiratory sensitization. So GHS-08, health hazard. So respiratory sensitization, carcinogenic, toxicity. So for example, chromium and ammonia are ones that are definitely big health hazards. So now at last we have environmental hazards. So that's GHS-09. So environmental hazard, so acute hazard to aquatic environmental. So chronic hazard to aquatic and environmental toxicity, for example, mercury and lead. So here we have a typical GHS compliant label. Some of the some of the requirements are that are required are product identifier, a signal word consistent with hazardous chemicals classification, hazardous or precautionary statements, with hazardous chemical classification, pictograms consistent with the hazardous chemicals classification, and manufacturers or importers details. There needs to be a minimum of an address or business telephone number. Other requirements, if available, expiry dates, things like that. So some optional components are the CAS or the Chemical Abstract Service, which is primarily a US service, fill weight, UN number, that's a 4-digit number that identifies the dangerous hazardous substances, lot or batch numbers, type of identification numbers and recall, even a barcode. If you're not selling this into retail, you don't necessarily need a barcode on there, but that's also something that is an optional item. So implementation from a hardware and software side. So GHS chemicals labeling only needs to be printed in color if selling and transporting chemicals in Europe. If kept locally in Australia, then you can print your GHS pictograms in black. So you don't need to fork out a lot of money for a full colored printer that also isn't always GHS compliant. So you will need a thermal transfer printer that uses ribbon, that is chemically resistant, along with polysynthetic labels. If you can get the labels pre-made with the red diamond, you can overprint them then in black. Using consumables that are GHS compliant means that the labels remain very chemically solvent resistant and provide good display for your GHS pictograms, signal words, and precautionary statements. So the last thing you want is to start exporting your products to have all your compliant, safe use and storage information disappear from the label and cause you a big legal headache. So from a hardware side, the 4-inch BFV4T, BA410T, and EX4T could be used for 1 litre or less containers. Our 6-inch wide EX6T could do 5 litre or 10 litre containers. And then our 8-inch 852 and SX8 can do the bigger 20 litre containers and bigger drum. Contact me anytime to discuss more around what your needs are, sizing to work out what printer, labels, and ribbons you require. So for any label printing, I always recommend Seagull Scientific's Bartender. The Bartender Ultralight is sold with any of our Toshiba barcode printers, and with that software comes access to all the GHS pictograms as a font series. Similar to what Wingdings used to be. This is also along with other pictograms for a lot of other standard compliances and standards, including the ADR. So it's Agreement of Dangerous Chemicals by Road and Rail, which is an international version of our ADG. So you can use those pictograms along with some of the others. And also, if you're wanting more functionality like databasing serial numbers, automation, etc., and a higher access to the pre-made template from Seagull Scientific for GHS labeling, then you'll need Professional Edition above. But if you're looking for basics and what you see is what you get kind of sort of label design, the free version of Ultralight will be fine for you. So this is just showing you a preview of one of the GHS templates from Seagull Scientific for Bartender. So there isn't much that needs to change on the front. You can edit the barcode, you can edit the design, you can change where things are, and you can make it look a little bit, different. But for primarily, you can go straight into print on this sort of design, put in your quantity you want to print, and you can then just change the details on the screen here. So put in your identifiers, your signal words, your statements, change all your different other little information, fill weights, UN numbers, lot numbers, address details, all that sort of stuff. It's really simple. You can change this to add in different, but as you can see, design is specifically a very quick and easy GHS label design, which again, you can put in your own product details in there as well and sort it towards your pre-made labels. So where to find more information? So, of course, there are plenty of sites around online to get information about the GHS chemical labelling compliancy. For local standards, I always go to the Safe Work Australia website, and then you search GHS in their search bar, and you have plenty of information come up, including Australia's GHS standards, as well as classifying chemicals in Australia, which is information about our chemical transport AGG codes. You can also find links to the Industrial Chemical Government website, which you can officially register your business to import and export chemicals. The second website that I always reference is the UN's GHS 7 guidebook. If you go to the UN Nations Economic Commission for Europe website and search GHS, there's a ton of information. Now, their guide is up to the revision 9, but you can get plenty of up-to-date information on there. And you can also look up the different standard guidebooks, which also is clickable from the Safe Work Australia website as well. So you don't always have to go to the UNECE website, but all good to review. And then also you can come to the Toshiba website, the Toshiba Australia web barcode website, and visit and contact us to chat about what hardware and software you might need to print your own GHS compliant labels. So yeah, thank you for joining me today. And if you have any questions, please visit our website and contact us, and happy to help. Thank you. Bye.